My name is Tom Mackie. I have been in museums and public history and in academic teaching for about 41 years now. My favorite class to teach has been U.S. Survey, but because I worked at several Civil War sites and museums, I have been involved in the antebellum history, kind of fairly early American studies, more often than other areas. And Frederick Douglass, the content is kind of one of my favorite characters that I began studying sometime back when I was first having to look into antebellum life in America.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. I really do. So today we are talking about somebody that is very important in the history of the United States and in the history of African Americans. So the person of Frederick Douglass is absolutely very important for us. So thank you for taking the time to explain who this individual is. It's a series that we call Life and Legacy. So we're going to start with a little description of him. Who is Frederick Douglass?
Best way of describing him, I would say Frederick Douglass is the epitome in America of the self-made man. He identified himself this way. He is an activist. By using modern language, we'd say he is an activist. He's a professional activist. He spends almost really his entire post-slave enslaved life activating or promoting and protesting for the status of African Americans in the United States. But he does so not only in the United States, but throughout Europe as well. He's kind of one of our early celebrities. He was basically internationally renowned in this world of activism, not just in abolition, but temperance and women's rights as well.
Thank you so much for that. This is why we love history so much, because it gives us this chance to be able to dig into our past. It was something that have happened in the past, so we can sort of reconnect, because it is very important for us to connect. And that is the essence of life anyway, because if we are just here now, we think that the life we are living is just all about this moment, and we are missing something because we don't even know where we are standing. But if we can manage to recollect, to know where we are coming from, it helps us to make sense of what we have today and therefore project even into what is going to be happening in the future. So I love history. I love it a lot. So now let's go to the basics. What do we know about Frederick Douglass as a young child growing up?
He's born, I believe, 1818. He is born enslaved. He never knew his parents. He only remembers his mother up to about the age of 6. The enslaved world, even in Maryland, which is right around the D.C. area where he was born, though that area where he lived, born into, it was common for many enslaved boys and girls not to really have any connection with their parents. They would be farmed out to other places, raised by someone else sometimes. Families broken up were a common problem. So Douglass never knew his father. In fact, he suspected that his father biologically was one of the masters who raped his mother. He does not know his mother except that by age 6. He knew a grandmother, and he's somewhat raised on his own on different plantations around where he was born. So that's his origin story. Now he goes at length until his teen years, when he finally makes his escape from slavery.
Now a curiosity: why was somebody else needed to raise him? Why did the mother not raise him at the time?
You did not own your own body. The African American slave did not own themselves. Um, the Americans had grown a form of chattel slavery, which equated a human the same as cattle or horses in legal codes. It was a divisive, it was an explosive political issue, moral issue, social issue, but it was one issue that Douglass was simply grown up in. He would spend his entire life from the time he starts, leaving work, going into activism, to prove and document that he is an example of a man who has been enslaved, but is more human or as human as anyone else of any other color, and has the capacity intellectually, morally, to participate in the social world. on an equal footing. That is his life goal. He would spend that before the Civil War, after the Civil War. And that is kind of his core message throughout his life, even the many writings and speeches he gave.
All right. Now, help us understand the United States of Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass at this time that we're talking is still a young man.
Right,
He's still not, okay, he freed himself when he was 10 years old, you said, right?
right. If he freed himself,
Okay.
um,
Yeah, yeah, tell me, how was the United States at this time? Give me a picture, something that we can look at.
the United States, when people will talk about it, people living here would say they would use the word the United States are. They would not say the United States is. Because since the founding, even in the colonial years, but particularly after the Revolution, 1790s, 1800s, the United States political structure formed and coalesced around the economies of the states. Were they based on a slave system? Were they based on a free labor system? That became one of the bigger dividing lines. The slave system would define culture, it would define religion, it would define even your sense of belonging and purpose in life. Were identified by whether or not you were part of that system. When Douglass talked about it, he said slavery, among its worst sins, is not so much the cruelty, but that you are unable to be a person. The personhood is removed within the slave system. This is what is often ignored and what we call neo-Confederate, retelling of it. You are no longer a person; you are a thing. You are a piece of property in this system, and so cruelty is a matter of course. It doesn't. That's not so much the court, but it happens to be. America is divided among those functions. So 1820, 1830, 1850. These are crisis moments between the end of the War of 1812 and the Civil War, where Congress is going to have to come together and make a compromise, whether it be over states, whether it be over tariffs, but slavery is going to be at the bottom of this piece, somewhere in the mix of this political compromise. And each time those come up, almost every 10 years, each of these comes up, the U.S. nearly collapses or shatters into pieces. There are threats of civil war in 1820, 1830, 1850. Each of these moments, there was a crisis moment, and congressmen, senators come together, able to compromise, but the compromise has always been at the expense of continuing slavery deeper and deeper into the social network. By 1858, here's America. Every single Protestant church, this is a dominant religion here. Every single Protestant church has split. And the core issue for their splitting is over slavery. And this is before secession movement has taken effect. Old senators like Henry Clay were terrified to realize when the Methodists split in 1845, if the Methodists, the biggest church in America, can't hold it together through the slave debate, what chance do the rest of us have? And so many could see this coming. Many could feel this split coming. They would work out compromises. And so news, the various commentaries people would make, editorials, this is going to be in a lot of people's minds. And there are other issues as well. It's not as simple as that, but many who work in government or watch politics closely at this day and age could have seen this, did see this, and often talked about this sense of a doom kind of coming up, with this sense that this is not going to go well. This is, in fact, Edward, there were some politicians, Seward had said, he called it the irrepressible conflict. I don't see any way this is going to end well. That's a modern version of saying it, but basically, the irrepressible conflict, I don't know how we're going to get out of this. To use a modern analogy.